Oh, hey, everybody. It's me, James, from the Oracles, and welcome to this episode. Question, do you have a Ouija board? This would be the time, if I had one, I'd hold up and show it to you, but I just have my book on my interview with our guest, who is a Ouija board goddess, I believe. Karen A. Dahlman. I've known her for about 6 or 7 years, talked to her lots of times. She is my go-to person on anything talking board, anything Ouija board. She's the one who actually taught me how to say Ouija instead of Ouija. Fascinating lady. But always curious if you've ever had a Ouija board. If you have, and you're on, you're actually watching this on the YouTube channel, do some comments down below. Tell me your experiences on the Ouija board. I'd be really interested in finding out if you've had one of those things. Interesting history on these things. Back in around the mid 1800s, when the spiritualist movement really got off and was going, people were having seances and table tipping parties and inviting people over to talk to ghosts. And the Fox sisters were out there in the eastern U.S. and they were knocking on walls and saying they were communicating with the dead. And somebody actually put together a board with the alphabet on it. And they would either use a pendulum hanging over top, or they'd use the planchette, which is a little heart-shaped thing, and allegedly it would slide your hands around and pick up the alphabet, and you would spell out whatever you're wanting to talk about, which was a bit of a long and drawn-out way of doing things. That was back before we had Zoom recorders and audio, or you could put your headphones on and maybe have a back-to-back conversation, a full-on conversation with somebody, quote unquote, on the other side. Well, a guy in the States decided he could probably make a couple of bucks on this weird thing, and nobody else had patented before. So his name was Kennard. And nothing to do with the ships. It was Kennard with a K. And so not the ship line Kennards, but he got a handful of investors together and started a company, Kennard Novelty. And that was the business that he was going to make these Ouija boards, get them out there and start making a few dollars on them. And one of his investors, a guy named Elijah Bond, was the attorney in the group. And I think it was February 10th, 1891, he strolled into the patent office and he brought his sister-in-law, Helen Bond, with him. Now, Helen, he described her as being a very strong medium. And they were going to present this toy / novelty to the patent office. And of course, the patent officer's wanting to know, well, how it works. How am I going to give you a patent if I don't know how it works? So they do a demonstration. And supposedly they don't know this guy's name. So he says, okay, if that thing works, tell me what my name is. And it spells out the guy's name, at which point he gives him the patent. And it's interesting in the patent, and a lot of patents will tell you how a device works. In the original patent for the Ouija board, this novelty, it doesn't say how it works, which of course added to all the mystery behind this awkward little device that they patented back in 1891. And from there, what is a Ouija board. We won't get into the naming of it because there's controversy over that, whether it was taken from the French word for yes, oui, or wa, or if you're from Quebec, northern Quebec in Canada, why. So oui for yes in French and ja for yes in German, and put them together, Ouija. But there's a number of different bits of history in regards to how it finally got the name. So I'm not figuring out which one is true or not, even though that Ouija, that French German thing, ends up being a question on Jeopardy the last couple of weeks. So that was interesting. And they claim, Jeopardy claimed that's how it was named. Maybe that's how it was named, but don't know for sure. But very interesting history on the Ouija board. And of course, then they started being mass produced. And of course, anything you get a patent on, other people are going to copy it, and they're going to call it theirs. It'll add something and subtract something, and then they'll have a patent pending, and then probably never go actually get the patent because it would breached the original patent by the Kennard Company. So we are going to talk about that a little bit, her Ouija board experiences. Yeah, so in February 1891, the first few advertisements started appearing in papers for the Ouija, the wonderful talking board. And it was like right across the Pittsburgh toy and novelty shop describing the magical device that answered questions about the past, present, and future with marvelous accuracy. We don't know. And it promised a never-failing amusement and recreation for all classes. A link between the known and unknown, and the material and the immaterial. Other advertisements in New York newspapers declared interesting and mysterious, and testified as proven at the patent office before it was allowed. And the price was $1.50. Yeah, interesting. Karen's going to come by, and after Liam drops in to tell you a little bit about the show, but Karen is going to tell you how she went from being that intuitive little kid to getting that Ouija board for Christmas back in the 70s, and how that really changed her life, because it allowed her to communicate with the things that she had seen and heard from a very small age, the beings that were around her. And we get that a lot from when we talk to people about what they had seen as children, like literally laying in bed and there's things in their room and listening to the voices. And, Karen's not, some homeless person who's delusional. She's pretty with it. She's an entrepreneur. She's a clinical psychotherapist. I'll get a little bit into that, a little bit more about exactly what her background in that is. She's pretty switched on. She's also an author. If you go to her website, what is it? Creative Visions Publications. Creative Visions Publications, and you can see the books that she's written. And we touch on a bit about what's in some of the books, compare that to where her life is right now, and a little bit on the book that she is writing. Also, she has her own YouTube channel, and that's Creative Visions TV. So literally just Google Karen A. Dahlman, and it'll take you on that social media connection to all the stuff that she's doing. She's also doing readings now, like full-on psychic readings. We talked to her about how that developed from her Ouija experiences and her now channeling, and the different beings that come through, and the information that she gets and how she receives that information. And we talked about the Ouija board as a focal point, as a focus, just as oracle cards or tarot cards might be, rolling bones and looking at them, or runes, and saying, okay, this is what I see. And if you know anything about mediumship and mediums, again, medium being the in-between of a higher source and our human existence, and just being that medium in between to pass the information on, that conduit. We get into how it's developed from the Ouija board to what she is doing now. Fascinating. Now, Karen believes that self-empowerment it's key to living an abundant, connected life. Now, as you plug into the consciousness of your higher self, you step into your empowered center. This unveils that person you are meant to be and to express within this world we are right now. Now, Karen received her BA and MA degrees from the University of New Mexico. From Karen's background and practice as a licensed and board-certified psychotherapist, professional, counselor, and hypnotherapist in private practice, she writes about ways to personally transform into your greatest self. Within the paranormal metaphysical circles, as I said, Karen is known as a leading expert and Ouijaologist. And since 1973, when she got that board for Christmas, she has been pretty well going full time on this whole Ouija. I did it again. Sorry, Karen. Ouija thing. And it's fascinating how her path has developed and where it's taken her. She's been directly communicating with her spirit friends by the Ouija board and through other means. She's a channel for a collective group of light beings of source wisdom who come forth and they share wisdom with her. And they share the wisdom of all the ages. Their divinely inspired messages help others discover the greatest joys and possibilities for living the life of our dreams through self-empowering choices. We talk about that, self-empowering choices that we do make. And she invites you to tap into that energy and unleash your own unique forms of creativity in her first book, The Spirit of Creativity. Again, Creative Visions Publications. You can buy her book through there, Spirit of Creativity. In her second book, The Spirits of Ouija, she helps you evolve beyond the stereotypical and society belief of what happens when a person dies. Also while teaching you how to communicate with the deceased and disincarnate spirits. And her third book, which is, well, I guess she's working on her fourth now, but in her third book, it's called The Spirits of Alchemy. And we talk a bit about the spirits of alchemy and some of the things that she has kind of developed since actually writing that book, what she discovered and why she wrote that book and where it has taken her. And in that book, she continues to this exploration into the expanses of our own being by taking us on a journey to connect and be in communication with our higher selves, our spirit guides, and of course, the source wisdom, and while opening ourselves to this synchronistic and mystical experience as we kind of travel through this norms of our lives. And currently, she continues to push the boundaries of this consciousness as she explores and researches and communicates with this expansive and sentient source of energy. And we kind of talk about who this sentient source of energy is, but she won't name him. I'm pretty sure we call him, oh yeah, it's a him. We do actually talk about it being a he rather than a she. And it's something that's very, very prominent in the fourth book, which obviously isn't out yet. And if you want to know what kind of other stuff that she does, she's actually the board of directors of the Talking Board Historical Society, and she's a host of her own, as I said, Creative Visions TV, where she further explores the unseen energies and dimensions with her guests. And please, if you get a chance, you come join her on YouTube at Creative Visions TV. I'm going to let Liam tell you a little bit about the show. In other words, it's the beginning. And then we're going to grab Karen and bring her in. And she's going to be here for about an hour. And we'll talk to her. She talks fast because she's in a hurry. She had to do some readings. And if you like her and are interested in getting a reading from her, go to her website, Creative Visions Publications, and also or get a hold of her on any of the social media through Karen A. Dahlman. And here's Liam, that funny little alien guy. And I'll be back with Karen right after Liam.
I see you found our little hiding spot in the universe. Don't get too comfortable. This is a place where you will find those with an experience that's out of this world, or possibly deep within your life. I welcome you to the Oracles with James Tyson. Lean forward and listen. We will pull you into a supernatural journey with guests from around the world, each one experiencing some of the most extraordinary phenomena this wee planet has to offer. Now, here are the Oracles with James Tyson.
Thank you, Liam. Hey, and thank you for dropping by, viewer/listener. Today with me over here is Karen A. Dahlman. Karen, how are you today?
Doing great. How are you? How's everybody out there doing today?
I think, I'm doing fine. It's a relatively nice spring day. I haven't got the motorcycle out yet, but got to get it polished up and going, and been doing a lot of fun stuff. But enough about me, young lady. How the heck are
Nice. Well,
you?
I'll tell you what, the weather here is beautiful. I did I think it was 6.5 mile hike this morning. Got up really early because when it starts getting warmer, got to get up early, but and hit the paths. But it was a beautiful day hiking.
Are you in Southern California?
I moved. I left Southern California. I'm now in Arizona,
Oh, nice. Which part?
north of Phoenix. I'm in Scottsdale.
Nice.
I
I
love
miss
it.
Arizona. I'm usually there 3 times a year.
Yeah, I remember you came down there once. You were telling me you go to Sedona. Is that right? Or Phoenix? Where do you
I go
go?
Sedona and Tombstone and everywhere in between.
Tombstone. You go. Okay, you go down. Yeah, that's nice.
And you have to go next time you're got an extra 3 hours. Go to Tombstone and go see my friend Nora, who runs the last of the mortuaries, Watt and Tarbell, and it's haunted as crap in there.
Dang. Well,
And
I grew up around the mines out here, and my dad was from this area, and so we'd go to like Bisbee, Jerome, Tombstone. I've been to all those places as a kid. Now it's time to go back as an adult.
oh yeah, it's fascinating, and you see it with obviously a different eye, and then go up north to like you said, Jerome, and watch UFOs pop out of the.
Oh yeah, I'm getting ready to go do a CE5 protocol in a couple weekends with a group of people out here, where we go up to the mountains and do that for the weekend.
Oh, that's sweet. Do you know Dr. Lynn Kitai?
I do. I know she's from Phoenix, right? The Phoenix Lights.
Yep. Yeah. She's fascinating. She's down there. She's one of my buddies that I visit all the time down there. What I miss is all the conferences, the UFO conference,
Me too.
there's another one in Scottsdale, and I apologize because I can't
It's the
remember
Afterlife Conference. I did that one year myself.
the one I went to. It'll be 2018 now.
AREI.
It was it was all psychics.
Oh, that's a different one. Sorry about that. Yeah, I do the Afterlife one here. I don't know about the psychic one.
Yeah, and I can't remember the name of that one, but that was really cool. The psychic one, and then it was on this week after the International UFO Congress or whatever.
That's right. That's out here too.
Yeah. So Dr. Lynn and I, we split a booth
Oh,
up there.
nice.
So yeah, got lots of time for Lynn.
I've been following her since the whole Phoenix Lights situation, and I mean, that night, I remember when they started talking about it. I was listening when Art Bell was explaining all that had happened, and interesting enough, I guess she's been getting a lot more photographs and stuff from her area where she is. So,
It's crazy.
I just moved here, you guys. So I'm expecting, and I have night vision goggles, as you know, James. I'm expecting to get some good alien interaction in UFOs. I'm expecting.
Well, did your night vision have a recording device on it? Like, can you record?
What I can do is it's actually set up where what I've been able to do is to take my iPhone and it goes into one side of it. And you can record with your iPhone. So it's
Sweet.
not built into it, but it has a setup where it's attachment where I can put my phone on there. And I've actually recorded. I've seen TR3Bs, the triangle shapes. I've seen boomerang shapes. I have those filmed. The one thing I don't have filmed though was a orb that I could not see with my eyes, and it moved around. And a friend of mine, we both saw it. We looked at the night vision, and we watched it fly over my pool, shot away. That was in California, but it was amazing because two of us saw it. There's a third person there who didn't have the goggles on, who couldn't see it, but it would interact with us. It kind of went around and came to us and then shot away. But we both have that experience, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is the coolest thing. If you can get up, away from town, get away from the lights a bit, and get up on the hill, you will see them. They're all over.
I know.
Yeah, it's crazy. Tom Dongo. Next time you're up around Cottonwood, Sedona, look him up. Melinda Leslie actually has UFO tours.
Yeah, there's a lot going on up there for sure.
So that was the first time I saw them. I had the night vision on. I'm looking, going, "Oh, okay, there's UFOs."
Yeah, we talked about that, and I think weren't you going to get like a one single one?
I do. I have that.
That's right. We talked about that before I bought mine. I asked you, what should I get? I remember I was asking you this question.
Yeah.
I think you were getting this one.
Yeah, it was a lot more expensive than you can get them now. It was a monocular with a recording on it.
That's right.
Yeah, and last July, I was out on my deck watching them. There was
That's
one
awesome.
chart over top of the Big Dipper where they were coming every 5 minutes. And they weren't satellites because satellites don't kind of cross each other. If you're
No, and don't
money on
change
a
like
satellite.
directions or speed up, slow down. I had the same thing. You can tell it's not this you know, satellite kind of thing. And the speed they go too, it's crazy. And then sometimes having like weird little lights on them, which are not the green and red flashing lights, which is something like a row of lights or something. I mean, or no lights at all. And you see an outline. It's crazy.
Yeah, that is so cool.
But I'm open to.
Glad you're down there because.
But listen, I'm willing to say it could be military too. I'm not going to say everything I see is going to be extraterrestrial. Some of it could be our own stuff.
Military usually has a strobe on it, a strobe light, that quick flashing beep beep beep.
Yeah, but if they're doing black ops, they're going to be silent about it.
So they'll be blacked out, and the only light you're going to see is the sun is kind of reflecting.
That's right, and those are the ones you see with no lights on them. You're like, what is this? And I saw one that was the one that looks like a boomerang, and I saw this one out by kind of near Thousand Palms, Palm Springs area in the desert. And I was going to tell you, James, too, where I live now, it's like we have a low light situation where there's no lights on at all. And if you have any lights on, they have to be really this low voltage. Really? So it's incredible, exquisite viewing.
Yeah, I was actually looking at real estate in Scottsdale.
Were you?
Yeah.
Well, come on out. We'll be neighbors.
We'll be neighbors. And I was looking at in
Won't
Sedona.
You be my neighbor?
And Cottonwood. Yeah. So just because I like the weather. And it's like a year-round motorcycle thing.
It is. And the weather's just wonderful out here, and outdoor activities are wonderful here too. And even when it gets hot, people's like, it's hot out there. I go, dude, you don't know hot. Hot was where I used to live out in Palm Springs, Palm Desert area. That's like 120. That's hot. This is a drier here, but you get up earlier in the morning. It's just you can make it work. It's
start
wonderful.
Your day early. Just shift your day. Okay. Enough about weather.
Oh,
get into this. You have since we spoke last, and you were like, we're not going to get back into the history of Ouija boards with you.
Right.
And thank you for teaching me how to say it properly. The because we've gone through that, and trust me, anywhere out there, if you Google Karen A. Dahlman podcast, you can hear all about when she was a kid and getting a Ouija board for Christmas and all that. But since we've talked last, you've expanded your communication use of a Ouija board, and you've moved into what we'll call channeling. What happened? What's going on, woman?
Well, I just want to say over here, that is the board I got from Santa Claus. That right there.
Oh, that is.
That's the original one from 1973, you guys. This is one I like to use the most.
I didn't want to age you, so there.
Yeah, that's okay. I got started in my past life. Okay. So, this is really what's happening. It's the realization that when you work a board, it's no different than any other kind of channeling. It's no different than actually a scrying too, or what people do when they do readings and they're doing empathic, intuitive readings. I'm doing all of that now. I'm actually working on a psychic platform now. I'm on my website. I offer readings. And I'm doing a lot more. As a matter of fact, after the show, as I told you, I've got a reading set up, and I might have a couple more this afternoon. So I'm doing a lot of that, but it's the realization that working the board is no different than just, it's me doing the work. It was never the Ouija board. It was never the planchette. It was always me being able to pull in the energies. And this is just the format I used. And some people like to call it the theatrics, but it was the vessel or the format I used in which to display the messages. So the messages wasn't because the board is anything special. In fact, these are mostly masonite behind me. Let me see, there's all masonite, and the one right here, that's a wooden one, 1910. So, and then I have one right here, which is more cardboard. This one's a newer one. And of course, there's one I made myself that's out of cardboard. So it's not these tools or even the materials they're made out of. And I want that to be real clear to people. So it's having that realization that what I'm doing is no different than what people do when they channel. In fact, a lot of people that got started became really famous for being trance mediums, which means you go more into a trance and allow the abilities of the words to come forth. Esther Hicks is one. Daryl Anka is another. Going way back, Jane Roberts. Going even further back, early 1900s. You got Betty White. There's been quite a few of them over the years. But what it was is a lot of them got started with the Ouija board. Now, Daryl Anka did not, but Esther Hicks, people don't know that she actually used the Ouija board for a while with her husband. Jane Roberts started on the Ouija board Betty White from the early 1900s got started on the Ouija board. And really what it was is realizing it's not the tool, it was themselves. And so through that process of that, you start to go, well, I don't need this tool. Now, for me, you guys, I have to say this too, James, I just love the Ouija board because it was something I got at such a young age that I was able to have all these different kinds of communications. And it was really entertaining when I was younger. And as I got older, I started to realize it could be used, meaning I could be used, I allowed to be my focal point that gave me the permission to be able to access these other realms of consciousness. And so once I said, you know what, I can take the board away. And I've been doing this progressively over, I would say the last, it's probably been about 6-7 years now, working off the board too. So, and I'll tell you this, James, since I moved away and my board partner, Rodney, he had moved away. When we see each other, we'll get together and do the board, but we're in two different places now. And he's the best board partner I've had or have right now. So I don't just sit down with anybody. So it actually became more of an impetus to even get off the board more. But I've been literally doing these psychic reads for 2-3 years now off the board. So for me, it was like saying, what's the difference? I'm getting these messages. It's coming from a very empowering place for people. It's helping people develop, to grow, to expand their belief system, and also to even benefit from it, maybe emotionally, personally, in their lives, to gain information. And if I took the board away, I could still do that. But I had to trust. So one of the ways I can explain this is, I always talk about, James, how on a board, there's that subtle movement of the planchette as it moves and you just follow it. Well, when I learned it was a physical sensation, but once I learned to interpret that physical sensation internally, this is where it gets a little woo-woo. Once I go, it's not so much a feeling here, although it was. When I started feeling the subtle in here, that's when I said, oh, get that first, which could be the subtle voice of the spirit guides, subtle voice of the deceased, subtle voice of the animals, all these different beings that I communicate with. And then I can get it here first and then verbalize it or do it through sessions without the board. So it's translating those two movements. This is something that it's the realization and how the two are really the same thing. It's just the way I show it to the public and how I show people how the messages come. So it was a very simple transition, but for me, because I've been using the board for such a long time, to make it, I had to transfer that and to discern it from within me first, as opposed to out here with the planchette.
So it basically just a focal point.
The Ouija board is a focal point, no different than scrying with your nail, no different than scrying with a crystal ball, no different than using the tarot cards and all those things. Exactly.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Now you've amped that up over the last year or so, or 2 years, I guess now.
Yes.
Really pushed in and opened yourself up to allow more information flowing through. Now, when you talk about channeling, are you still using the board or are you actually opening yourself up? And how is it coming out?
I'm doing both because I still really enjoy the tool of using the board. I love the physical sensation of the planchette moving, and I love the I'm so good at it. Okay, I'm so good at it, you guys, that it just flows so nicely that I'm so used to it. It's kind of like let's say you ride a bike and you get really good at it and you start running in races and you start winning. It's that kind of thing. Then if you take up a new sport you don't know anything about. So for me, making that transition made sense, but it was a little wobbly at first, like learning a new sport, and now it's building up to get better, because it's like now my level of feeling is not through the planchette, it's in here, it's in the heart. So I keep pointing in here because I've learned to discern, and so I can hear the voices of the guides when they come to me as not being my own. And in fact, I love to go hiking, because when I go hiking, and I used to call this, when I lived in California, walking and talking, where I would actually have these dialogues with the guides or the beings I was in communication with. It would be a download of information, I would hear it, and then I could respond to it. I could do it out loud, or I could just do it in my mind. And I do that when I go on my walks. A lot of times those conversations I'm having with the different beings that I'm in communication with. And it's typically not the deceased. And a lot of people just think the Ouija board's for the deceased, because that's how the spiritualist movement kind of captured the market and used it. It's really for just talking and communicating with any type of sentient being. So I've been doing that for years on the board. If you guys follow any of my books or my shows that I do, and I've spoken about it a little bit with James as well on some of his previous radio shows, but it's like I'm doing that now without the board, and it's just an easy transition, and it's really, gosh, it's discernment. And they're telling me right now, they're saying, tell them it's really about discernment, because it's like you learn to discern and know which voice is yours inside and which one's more of an external influence. And sometimes it's like it pops and you go, where did that come from? Well, who was that? And then that's when you start getting information, and I can feel where it comes in, and I can sense it when it's coming in. And that's the difference between using the board for me, because I put it all external, like it was out here, where it really was from in here coming through.
Is that overwhelming to you sometimes? Like when
Not
you're
at
out
all.
and about? No,
Not at all. Not at all. It seems overwhelming because it's such a weird thing to talk about with people. Not at all. It's because I think it was such a natural transition for me from seeing things as a child, hearing things, and actually I was actually doing this stuff as a kid. And now here I am full circle back to that, seeing things and hearing. When I say seeing things, it could be interdimensional beings, it could be a deceased somebody, it could be extraterrestrials. And as a child, I would see these beings and hear them. And they didn't always move their mouth. I didn't understand all that. Then the Ouija board came along at the age of 8, and that just allowed me to do it out here. But now I'm just kind of going back to where I can get that external influence, feel it, hear it, sometimes see it. I don't see it as well as I used to as a child, but I'm starting to see it more and more. In fact, I have a sentient being that I've been working with. This being came into me, came into my presence is what it is. I mostly talk to him through automatic writing, and then he will also do it through downloads of information. But he came through first through the board. Then the guide said he only wants to talk to you through automatic writing. So I have a journal for him only, and I call him a him. He actually is a him. It's another dimension with planets in it. It has nothing to do with our solar system at all or our galaxy. But this is a being that's like we would probably consider him interdimensional, but yet he has within this fractal of space, there's other worlds that exist, and they're like almost like parallel worlds. But anyway, he came forward because I was in Sedona, and I purposely had opened myself up and asked to communicate with who I call the guardians, who were these beings that used to come to me. Literally, when I was a child, I would see them. They were huge. They like a bright light. There was no physical form to them. So I never really knew where they were, who they were. But when they came, it was a very peaceful, loving feeling. And I would hear them talk. And it wasn't like they moved mouth because I couldn't see a mouth. I'd hear it in here. And I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. I didn't understand that until I got older. And I would answer them, and they would be there. And it was always a loving presence. What happens, I was wanting to make contact with them again off the board. And this was probably in 2000. I think it's been about 4 years now. 2017 was when it was. And then when I went to Sedona, have you ever been, James, to Angel Valley outside of Sedona?
I've been to a few places outside. Is Angel Valley to the northeast? Like on the highway out to Flagstaff-ish?
I think it's the other direction, if I'm correct. Angel Valley, it's a spiritual camp. You could go there during the day, and I just feel
no.
Okay. No. It's really in a valley, and it's probably not as popular as it used to be. We went there when there's hardly anybody there, which I liked. But they have a giant. It's basically it's the Charts labyrinth replicated there. It's huge. And so we took turns. I was with 3 other girls, friends, and we all took turns walking it. So we gave ourselves the privacy, and we took as much time in it. And mine was I did a mantra and a meditation, going there with the intentions of going within to the center of the circle, and then coming back out the circle. And the intention was meet the guardians and work with these beings again. And so when I came out, it was weird. I remember looking up to the sky, and it was kind of cloudy that day, and the sky parted, and a giant heart shape was right there in the sky. And I heard, it's the portal through your heart. I went, okay, I'll work with that. That was my big message, my big takeaway, you guys, were at that point from Sedona. And so I go back home, and I give my board partner Rodney, and I said, hey, I want to talk to the guides about this. The guides for me come through really well on the board, although now they're working off the board more and more. But they came through and said, hey, how did you like that? They said, there's a new being that came through. It's not the guardians, but it's this being that's going to teach you, because you've been asking about developing your third eye that you were able to use as a child. And so we're going to introduce you to this being now. Now, I'm not going to say too much about it. I haven't really spoken about it, just maybe in whispers. It's in my book that I'm writing, but it has to do with this interdimensional. Actually, I hate to even use the word interdimensional, because he's like in his own dimension. We'd be interdimensional to him. Okay, and there's a whole civilization, huge beings. They're like giant size. He's at least 14, 15 feet tall. They're anywhere from 13 on up. I think the tallest is like 18 or something. But they're incredible beings, and they're large bodies. And I'll tell you this part, because they have a huge chest, and that's why they're so large. Their heart is so huge. They've really worked on developing their heart. Their heads are huge because they have a giant brain, but they have no eyes because they use the inner eye. That's how they communicate. That's how they see. So they've been teaching me, and they're still teaching me, but they taught me heavily for at least 2 to 3 years. I would say close to 3 years now. On the last year, I've been more on my own. They come through every now and then. But the idea is to learn to activate your pineal gland through the portal of your heart. And they said, they showed you the portal of the heart. That's when they came in. If you have intentions, and you may not be aware of it, you got to tune into this. You have intentions of wanting to work with these spirit beings or spirit guides. They do come through, not always in the way you want them to come, but in the way they need to come. And my experience has been over the years, it's always been an answer to some kind of intention if I'm willing to do the work. So they said, we're not going to talk to you through the board. You're going to have to do this through automatic writing. The reason for that is they wanted me to develop more of my own inner abilities and capacities that the guides were helping me with, and get off the board. Because they would literally call me little turtle when I use the board. You say, okay, little turtle, is this fast enough for you? Because you guys know, using the Ouija board, it's like A, B. Now it's like, okay, so this is what I tell you today, and I'm just writing it out. So it's like this whole progression they've been teaching me, and I find that I've been able to see things. I'll just say things. It's a variety of things because of this development. And I'm going to credit this group of beings. And there is a name to them, but I'm just going to leave it blank for now. But there is this group of beings that I'm going to credit for helping me really to make this transition off the board and to be able to see into other dimensions better than I ever have. And maybe like the last, let's say 46, 48 years, 8 years and prior, I was able to see really well into the other dimensions.
That is fascinating. Your website, where can people? Yeah,
my website is Karen A. Dahlman. Put the A in there, you guys. As James mentioned earlier, I go by Karen A. Dahlman, or go to creativevisionspublications.com. Now you can find me anywhere on the internet. You want to learn more about this channeling work I'm doing, and you can go to my website, read about stuff. I'm also offering readings now. There's links there. You can write to me an email, but also go to my YouTube channel where you'll see I interview all kinds of people on there, but I also talk more about the Ouija board, but I also am getting into communicate with sentient beings on and off the board. So that's kind of what I'm talking about today.
Now, if your YouTube channel, is that Karen A. Dahlman? Or
yep, Karen A. Dahlman, or Creative Visions TV. But if you go Karen A. Dahlman on there, you'll go right to me. You'll find me. It's just easy. Yep. Thanks for asking.
Oh, no, that's cool. I think I subscribe to you.
I think you do too. I think I've seen you on there.
Yeah. You'll see me on there poking around in the shadows.
That's right.
When is this book of yours going to be available for me to peruse?
Well, it's so funny that you ask. Everybody's been asking me the same question because you guys follow me. I've been writing it for a while, and I guess I took a hiatus on this last about 8, 9 months. I was selling a couple homes. I had a property I wanted to sell because it was like a rental property thing, and then I moved. And it's been a whirlwind in this COVID time. I'm getting back into it now. Now I'm focused on the downloads, taking the notes, going back to it. I would expect to get it out in the next year. So, good. And it's definitely about consciousness and communicating with sentient beings. Various ways of doing that. I'm going to be talking about on the board and off board. A lot of the beings that I communicate with that I do meet on the board, we continue our conversations off the board. And a lot of beings I meet off the board don't even want to come onto the board. And there's some that just I work on the board. So it'll be a little bit of each. And now since I'm tuning into like this one group of beings I'm telling you about more off the board. And there's also a few others that exist on our planet that I'm communicating with that off the board. I'm going to be talking about that too. You know, James, I do research because I'll find other people who are doing this work too. But for me, I really write from personal experiences because it's amazing the things that have come through the board and my work with using this tool, but really that's because I'm using my own abilities. And so this book is not just about sharing what I do, it's also about teaching people how to do this yourself. Because I find, and this is what my whole work is about, it's not to say, hey, go use a Ouija board, it's cool. My whole work is about how do you empower yourself to activate your own abilities, your own potentialities, and how to get out there if you choose to explore and discover how expansive the universe really is. And that includes the inner dimensions, the extra dimensions, the parallel universes, the parallel existences. It includes also learning to tune into the frequency of different vibrations, which would be the sentience of beings. So I'm going to be talking about all those things in there. A lot of my stories, and they blow me away. I got to tell you of the experience I've had. And I got to tell you, some are even with people that I've known more recently who have died, who continued the contact with me that we had in this life, the explorations and moving into the other dimension. There's a lot of stuff about the afterlife in there as well. But it's really about traversing these different realms and not getting stuck or stuck in a box and this is as far as you can go. It's like really blowing the lid off, pushing the walls out and helping you, if you so choose, to do that in your own way.
So I have to wait for the book. That's what you're saying.
Well, I'm giving you a lot of ideas for it and a little bit of story about those beings, but there's a lot more. There's some it's mind-blowing stuff in there.
It's fascinating that, you know, knowing you from 6 years ago,
at least,
and where you've gone now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from all of a sudden, you know, doing the Ouija board thing to talking to the rattlesnake on your deck.
Oh yeah, you remember that story?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and it like you're opening like and you know it's like the lotus flower. You're just doing this with a couple little hiccups, but it's still opening up. And you know it comes down to the question is what I get a lot is like, why you? Like why? Why are you put on this path? What are you doing with the information that is being communicated with you? And why is it I shouldn't say why just communicated with you, but what is your task once you have it?
And this is what I would say in response, why not you? You, James, but everybody else out there, why not you? It is you. It is you. I'm here to say we are all able to, if you so choose. I just so happen to came into this world seeing things, hearing things, and nobody being able to explain this to me until I found the Ouija board. And then, you know, not even my religions, I studied a lot of different religions, but even as a child being raised in Catholicism, I did believe in guardian angels and people maybe speaking in tongues, and I followed the Bible and the burning bush, and you can talk to this burning. I said, well, what the hell? Why, if they can do it, why can't I? So the question was, why not me? And so I say to everybody, I said, what I'm doing is nothing special. There's nothing special about it. And the guys remind me all the time, there's nothing special about you. It's that I've learned to crack the code to listen. So a lot of people say, why don't I hear? Because of the rattlesnake, yes. And I talked to the rattlesnake on the board. Now I'm talking to the animals off the board. Why? Why? How is this happening? It's happening because I believe, number one. Number two, I set the intentions to do so. And three, I'm open to the possibilities. And it's as simple as that sounds, yet it's not as simple when you have to just learn to kind of crack that code within yourself. We are our only limitation. Our thoughts, the way we view the world, and what we've been told and spoon-fed to believe about the world and ourselves within it are our only limitations. And so I'm here, and I know my path and my role is to say, you're unlimited. You are infinite beings of divine energy, that divine energy that created all, whatever you want to call that, all that is, source, God. There's many names, the prime creator. It runs through all of us. We are all an extension of that. And once you realize that, you can start, and you have to trust yourself in this. You should never have all the answers because you never will have them. But you should start trusting you're getting information and play with your imagination. What would this tree say to me if it could speak? And as you play this game with yourself, and I'll talk about this more in my book, and that's what I'm writing about, as you ways to start cracking this code, I call it. Maybe the book will be called Cracking the Code. I don't know. Cracking the Consciousness Code. How's that, James? That might be it. But the idea is to crack that code within yourself. And once you do, you start tapping into, we're all connected.
Yeah.
I don't need a phone. I don't need a Ouija board. I just need my own thoughts, your thoughts, and the willingness for those communications to happen. And that is how people do telepathy. A lot of the beings and even the animals, they all tend to speak that way. And by the way, you guys, trees talk. I did a whole show on this. I've talked about it many times on YouTube, but go look that one up. This is where it begins, with talking to the trees, talking to the animals. And I talk about how to do that and what the messages were. And now it's very easy when I go on my hikes or my walks. That's why I love being in nature, is I can hear them talk. And if I tune them out not to hear them and I'm focused on maybe the guides or just my own thoughts, I can do that too. But then I might hear a random, hey, I'm over here, talk to me. And I'm like, oh, who is that? And it's only because I'm open to it. It doesn't ever get distorted or weird, because it's kind of the way I came into the world. And now I'm being able to sort through it and make sense of it. And the Ouija board was just one path I took to help me understand how this process works, And it's nothing special. It's nothing special. We all can do that. And that's going to be my message to everybody, is that this is just natural. This is natural. If you choose, you may say, I don't want all that, because that's a little creepy and scary. I'm saying this is naturally how I came into the world, and I want all that and then some, and I will continue exploring that if I can, and as long as I can.
Yeah. Well, good. It's one of those things. We all have experiences as a kid, and I think 99% of us have blocked stuff, and we keep putting up those walls. And I used to always call the walls as the bricks made of religion and science and teaching, whatever we were taught, our parents telling us, no, you didn't see that, or whatever. And then eventually we just walk away from it and we don't see it anymore. Where you had that opportunity as a kid to actually see it and think it out. And it's come back, and it keeps coming back, and it's getting turned up and turned up and turned up. I shouldn't use the term turned up, because it sounds like there is a maximum on that, but I don't think there is. I think we just get to a point where you just get to a point where and that was the scary thing. I was always told that you didn't want to know everything, because there was no use being in this plane anymore, because you had nothing to learn. So always have something else to learn, and they'll let you stay a little longer.
I think a good word to use is amplification. So it started to amplify and more. And I call the Ouija board, that was my lifeline. It was my lifeline back to those different experiences I had as a child, that I was told, that's make-believe, this pretend, you're making this up, don't do that in school, you shouldn't talk that way, it scared my friends or whatever. So I did put a lot of that away, and then that was my lifeline. These guys were my lifeline to continue the conversations. And then I put away for reasons of being a psychotherapist and working with people, and you don't bring that, I could have lost my license, you're a quack. This was back in the 90s, 80s, 90s, and then working in other realms of work. James and I, we were talking earlier about our professional careers in the past, and especially his. And there's a certain stigma about what you're supposed to be and do in the public, and I have that too, as a therapist and also as a business owner in the telecommunication industry, that I couldn't just talk about the stuff, and so I purposely kept it secret. Well, now since it's out there, you just go Google my name. I don't care anymore. You get to a point, and because it's so important to me in my life, that's when I was able to amplify it even more and turn it up and take it to higher levels, which really is going full circle for me, and 360. And I think you hit on a wonderful point, James. The thing is this: everybody's had some kind of experience, but they may block it. Like, I love that, the blocks of like religion or institutions or family or pressures of society telling you build it up, that you shouldn't be doing this, or you can't do it, or you're making this up. Like, I had the same thing, and it's like we put that away, and even if you think you didn't have those experiences, they're here for all of us to have. So you can come back to it, as I've done. I know, James, you have too. You've really brought the stuff full circle for you as well. And I feel like I have too. But I want to say this about learning: you never will learn it all. I don't care. Everybody says, "Oh, you'll get off the wheel of cycle of life and death." The reality is there's many other dimensions to go into and continue to repeat this process, because guess what? This is what I understand. The universe is always expanding, contracting, expanding, contracting, and it's learning and growing as we learn and grow and develop, and all the other species and beings and different habitants of this wonderful space of the matrix, of all that is, whatever that entails, is also growing and developing. So it's like you never end. It's infinite. Now, can I wrap my brain around that? Not really, but I can understand in theory that just it's always more to learn. And I find that fascinating in itself, that I know I'll never be done. I'll never exhaust it. Let's put it that way.
No, you won't. You'll exhaust me talking about it, but you'll never exhaust it in yourself. I find it fascinating to look at your path and where it's gone. And again, reflecting back to your, all of a sudden you're talking to a rattlesnake, to now you communicating with trees. And I had a guest on, Amy Dempster, who that's what she does. But when she does it, it's not words. They give her pictures.
Yes.
Is that what you get?
Okay, so on the board I get words. They
Yeah.
actually have an interpreter that will spell out, because that's how the board works, right? So I get words there. I will get, and this with animals too, I think, because I've refined this within myself because of all the board work, you guys. I will, even for the animals, I will get, when I'm doing this off the board, I will get words, I'll get phrases, and I also get a lot of pictures and images and feelings. It's mostly here first in my heart. I'll feel it, and then I can translate those feelings into words, just like the interpreters when I work with the animals through the board, or trees through the board, or other beings. It gets interpreted and translated into something I can understand, because, by the way, Ouija boards are for spelling. So that's how you rely on that to work. So I think that's really helped me develop my own ability to discern the emotions I'm feeling, where I open my portal of the heart, again, back to that, and then connect the third eye, this ability within the pineal gland to the heart. And I've also been doing a lot of mantras that I've learned. I studied a course from this wonderful, he's a teacher of opening your third eye. And that was something I was led to by this group of beings that took me to him to study from. And that's a physical person living here in the here and now. And that helped me work these mantras to connect some of these chakras up to here, and then work them all together, and then up here. So there's a lot of techniques I've been using over the years to do this, but it's really learning to put all that together. And that's why I'll get downloads of words now. But still, I get the feelings, the sensations, and that gets interpreted within me. But it happens like this, you guys, instantaneously. So when I'm doing readings for people, I'll get some specific things, like a pulling, I don't know the name it comes from, I just trust. And it might be a feeling, I'm feeling this, I'm getting this color, and I'm getting this animal. Oh my God, I'm getting the name, boom. So it becomes this whole thing. My process is putting all those things together. It's really interesting how it works. It's not, everybody works differently, but I found what works for me. And so that's kind of how it's happening for me. But I love hearing how other people work, because we all do it differently. And we might have common grounds, but we have different ways inside of ourselves to interpret it, to get the message out.
Yeah, I think we all do it differently. It's called, you have people have different divinations, I think it's called.
Yeah, you could call it that.
Gifts. Yeah, you've been allowed to do this, and they are constantly growing. And again, I picture yourself in the lotus flower opening up, and some people it closes. Like you go, part of their life it's open, part of it's closed. It goes back and forth. But when you get it opened, you have some control over the information that comes in too. So you're not going to get a lot of scary stuff.
Right, and I love this image of the lotus flower, because you guys, the lotus flower, it blooms and its roots go down to the muck and the mire and the dirt and the quagmire in a dirty pond. It'll go all the way down and get into the dirt for it to get its nutrients, and then it starts to open. And that's a beautiful thing, because even it's still a beautiful lotus flower, whether it's open or closed. That's humanity. That's all sentient beings. It's beautiful no matter what you do, and it goes into this muck and mire, the bog, the peat. But let me say this. And this is what I spoke about in my third book. It's over here. Let me grab that for you guys. It's called The Spirit of Alchemy. This book right here, you guys, I talk about how to open that up. I don't use the analogy of the lotus flower. Instead, I talk about going within yourself, and I call it mining, going within yourself and mining yourself and learning from that stuff you don't want to look at, and digging into those deep crevices within yourself, and then beginning to find what's in there. and bringing it more to the surface in an alchemical fashion, changing the dross, the lead in our lives, into more golden opportunities. And so how you do this, here you go. Here's the secret. I'll get this out. It's in my next book too. The secret is this. You ready?
Yep.
It's being able and willing to express, feel your emotions. Key. That is what you open up. And by the way, the greater depth of pain you feel when somebody, like you lose, you love, and they transition, or an animal, and they're like, I just can't shake it. It's just horrible. That's because you loved so deeply. So that's a gift. Know that the deeper you love, the more deeply you're going to feel, because that is what that love is about. And so when you do these kinds of work, it's about allowing yourself to blossom. And I love that lotus, because that's a lotus flower in the chakras. When you open that part up, it's like you really have gone into the depths of your soul. You're digging into that parts of yourself that are not comfortable, that could be painful, the trials and tribulations of your life, and you're beginning to reconcile. But it's like you're allowing them to exist. You're not trying to get rid of them. You're saying, that's part of who I am. And because of that pain, I really can have greater joy. So the greater depth of your pain is the greater depth of your joy, and vice versa. And that, my friends, is the truest secret to beginning to open up to other sentience, because it's such a subtle energy. You don't feel it unless you can fully feel all ranges of emotions.
Now, would I be right in saying that you're not going to be exposed to an interdimensional being that's 13 feet tall and a big chest unless they believe you're ready to process that?
I would say it's absolutely true, but I will say this: if you want the depth of information, they're not just going to come in and just download a bunch of stuff unless there's something about you open, as you just mentioned. However, there's always the other rule to the thumb, outside the rule, a book. So this is, for example, people go, I didn't believe in aliens, or I didn't believe in angels, and all of a sudden, this person appeared. That can happen because it's like part of you has been asking for this awakening. It could be on a subconscious level. It could just be that it's your time, and it was your contract you made with these other beings to eventually awaken to their presence. What does that mean in your life? I don't know. You'll have to figure that part out for everybody, as these things happen. But yeah, things can happen which seem out of the blue, but trust me, it's never out of the blue. It's because there's something of you that's awakened and wants that. Right now, James, I'm sure you guys are talking about this. It's like there's such a great awakening going on. And what that means is we're being asked to remember really who we are. And part of that means we're being, the energy coming in with, whether it's the full moon, the alignment of the planets, COVID, whatever it is, it's pushing us in directions to really relocate within ourselves to access our greatness. So, and literally, I relocated to a new location, but there's a relocation within myself as I begin to take in more of this information. Their lives are changing very rapidly right now in many great ways. And that's because you're being pushed, sometimes nudged, sometimes forced to make that shift, because there's something more for you, more profound to open up to. Now, everybody's got to find out what that is for them. I know what it is for me, and it's for me right now. And it could change tomorrow. It could change in years, but it's me being able to have these conversations and to be able to push the boundaries of space-time continuum and push the boundaries of consciousness. That's what I'm doing here.
It's fascinating. You're doing it in a great place too. You're doing it.
That's what led me here now. It's not by chance I landed here. And I can tell you, this property I bought, it's major vortex. And when I stand there on my property in the center of it, it's like I feel an emotional upwhelming. I've never felt before in a place ever. I felt like emotional. Oh, it's beautiful. It touches me. This is like oh my God, I'm home. And it awakens my heart, and I sing. And in fact, when I found this place, I come back to California and I go, hey, Rod, this is the Ouija board. Let's talk to the guides. And I said, this is what I'm feeling. And they go, do we have to tell you verbally or on the board what you already know? They said, where you are now, your heart sings. You found home. I found home. Not a house, not where I'm supposed to live for now. Home. This is heart. This is my home. And I feel it. And people say, you'll know it when you know. And I've never known what that felt like. I know it. It's like, and the best way the guide said it was, your heart sings most loudly there. And that's what where the portal is to do this work. You have to open the heart. That's what I'm saying, James. It's just going exponentially for me right now, and I'm willing to push the boundaries because it's resonating with me. It's like I'm aligned, and I do believe in ley lines. I do believe in focal points of the earth, and I know I'm not too far from Sedona, about an hour and a half outside of it. In the area in Scottsdale where I am, it's beautiful. All the sorors there. I live right by all the sorors. I have sorors all over my property, and they speak to me. I mean, I can feel them, and I can feel the elements and the earth and the animals, and they're around, and it's like it's like overwhelming in a very beautiful way, but that overwhelming feeling, I allow myself to go into it where I would literally I might cry, I might just laugh, get giddy. I go into the depth of those emotions, and when I do, boom, ideas come. It's like that's the gateway, that's the portal in, you guys. That I gotta tell you, that all started back here at the Ouija board. Okay, that helped me do all this that I'm doing now.
That was your introduction to all this.
Yeah, well, allow me to go back and make the communication with what I had as a kid that I couldn't explain because everybody said that's not real. And that became the reality to do it. So, yes.
Yeah. Well, good. I like it that you're where you are. Actually, I love it that you're in a good place. Plus, it's in a place that I come and visit. So there's that too. And I find it's an interesting area, that whole valley where Phoenix, Scottsdale, and everything is. There was I can't remember the story exactly, but wasn't there a huge, a couple of thousand years ago, and a vast civilization, a city there, and eventually it disappeared. And
are you talking about Native American culture?
It was, Native American, possibly even Native. It would be Native American, but originating in South America.
Okay, so there's a story about Cocopelli, which is he came up from Mexico, the southern Mexican. Southern Americans came up. There's also a story of the Anasazi, the old ones, the ancient ones, and the Hohokam. So, because I'm very familiar with this area because I grew up mostly in New Mexico, and my parents have lived out here. My dad grew up in this area. We traveled all over the Southwest. So I resonate with the different tribes and cultures here. My property, where I'm moving to, out here, it actually was Hohokam Indian. Anasazi, the old ones, Hohokam Indians lived there, and I resonate with those tribes the most. And they became the Papago and some other names that they've transferred over. But that's one of the original tribes out here. And the Hopis, is the Three Masons over there, not too far from Sedona, which is not too far from where I live. And they believe they came from the stars. And I resonate with their kivas, the sipapu, the hole in the earth, where they emerged. They went down with all the great destructive forces when there was the floods, the fires, all that stuff. They went with the Ant people into the ground. They arose in the sipapu. Their kachinas arrived, which are their sacred old ones that dance. But they say they came from the stars. And so I really can resonate. But there's some really old traditions in this area. And there's a lot of petroglyphs, hieroglyphs. And I feel that. I feel that when I'm walking out here and hiking. It's almost like I'm looking through the eyes of myself as one of these old ones, of the ancient ones.
That's very cool. It's interesting, the migration we've had over the last 1,000 years there. And the story that I heard, the civilization actually left the area when temperature on the earth changed. And it became arid as opposed to green and lush and forested. And once it was no longer viable to have a city of 2 million people there, which was allegedly what it was, over hundreds of years, it just dissolved into what's now the desert. But it would be that far back, like that.
Well, maybe you were talking about some of the civilizations because in the Grand Canyon area, which is also in the state of Arizona, they found those caves that had hieroglyphics and also paraphernalia that was like from Egypt. Right. So there are some tribes that they're saying came here, whether it was on boat, papyrus, maybe it was spaceship, I don't know, who knows. But they came, and so there's this old sense here in this area of the Southwest, especially the Four Corners and in this whole area here. And by the way, you know, Sedona is all the red rocks and the power points. You've been there before. There definitely are vortexes there. I've spent a lot of time hiking and up in that area as well. You can sense them and feel them. I mean, it's these special spots all over the world, you guys. Don't feel like you're left out if you're living somewhere else. You can find
they're everywhere.
They're everywhere, and you'll find ones that resonate for you more. These tend to resonate for me more. But yes, you're right. There's even cultures that go back further than that they talk about. We're here.
Yeah, I've one of my favorite places in Sedona is the Bell Vortex.
Oh, I love the Bell Vortex too.
And actually, my tattoo, which is hard to see.
I see the Cocopelli on there. I see him.
Yeah, inside there, what you can't see is actually iron oxide, which is what makes them red. And I got the tattoo from a buddy in Sedona, and he actually has the soil from the 6 vortexes. Wonderful. And he mixes it with the ink. So the ink that ink in Cocopelli is actually got soil from the Bell Vortex in it. That's amazing. So what I'm wondering about with that soil, how come it doesn't decompose or excrete from your body since it's very organic? I don't know, but I can't get an MRI, I'm guessing. Because it's got iron oxide in there. That's really fast. I've not heard of people doing that, but I maybe because the ink, maybe because it's mixed with the ink. I don't have the answer to that, you guys, but that's really cool. Yeah. So you know the story of Cocopelli and yeah. Cocopelli is one of those things that resonated with me in a really bizarre way when I was in Southern Arizona. How so? And it was one of those things where I saw, you know, you'd seen the image. You're growing up, you know, it pretty well if you think about Arizona and tourism, you'll get a Cocopelli stuck on it. Right. And I was on my way between Bisbee and Tombstone heading to Bisbee. And just in the vacant plain deserty area. And it just was in my head, this Cocopelli thing. And I hadn't thought about it. And I'm not looking at it. There's no picture of it on the wall, but it is like yelling at me, like it's sitting in the car beside me. But lots of messages that I couldn't interpret. Mm-hmm. Oh, like you have to go here, you have to go there. You should really have to do this. And I'm like, I don't know. So I got into Bisbee. I did, you know, because it was paranormal kind of thing. I was doing, you know, hung out in a haunted hotel, had lunch or dinner there, and then went in the old part of Bisbee, poked around. More to do in my head, it was ghost stuff. Yeah. And I was constantly getting bombarded with, you should really go out in the middle of nowhere. Like I should drive out in the middle of nowhere, which I never did. So later on that trip away, I was up in Sedona, and there's a plateau. I apologize. That I was sure I had my phone turned off. Oh, how bad is that? It's me calling you. Hey. Yeah. So I was up in Sedona, and there's a plateau that I walk up to, a hike up on the Bell Vortex, and it's flat and it's kind of away from everybody. And literally I can just lay out on the rock and I meditate. And it's, you know, for those of you who meditate like for about 5 or 10 minutes, I think the first time I did, I thought it was 5 or 10 minutes. It was 45 minutes. Isn't that amazing? It was and of course you're not tired because the freaking rock is vibrating. It's like, but it's very relaxing. So during that meditation, it wasn't so much Cocopelli standing over top of me, but it was a hand going like this, look over there. And it was like, you have to go over there. Wow. So I left, and the next day I ended up going to where it was, which was pointing towards Cottonwood, Jerome area. And I just started feeling like I was in a car accident. I got rear-ended by a pickup truck while parked in a police car at a red light. And it screwed up my lower back. So it was a lot of pain, and the pain was gone. After the Bell Vortex, the pain went away, and I'm driving, and I was giddy. And I keep looking back going, oh, it must have been whoever was pointing. And then I just connected. It just came to me. It was like that image of the Cocopelli character was the one that was guiding me around. Now, you can argue, well, that image was in my head, so whatever was guiding me took that image to do it. Well, here my cat. Let's say hi to you guys first. Here's Bear. Bear, say hi. You say hi, pussycat. Say hi.
Oh, you're so sweet. And by the way, guys, he talks to me. He named himself on the board. He named himself. That's how he got the name Bear. He told me he wanted to be named Bear through the board. Okay, so I want to say something about Kokopelli really quickly. Is that Kokopelli is a mythical person, but they say he was real, and they say there was a man who had a humpback, so he could have like tuberculosis back then, and he also had a club foot. But he was a very sexy man. When he came to town, he would, with all the women. But when he came. And he would come through to these different tribes, these different communities, that was like the women were seated. The women would become seated and ready to give birth after he left, but also the crops would. And he was like a traveling minstrel, traveling guy. He'd play his flute and he would mesmerize people, and people just loved him. And there was a really good article I read. I want to say this is probably about maybe 25 years ago in Arizona Highways, somewhere around that time. And they did the whole story of Kokopelli, from not just the myths, they talked about the myths, they talked about the reality of it being a real person. And so he very well could have been a real person that lived from South America that came up. And that's what, if you look at Kokopelli drawings, he typically has one foot fatter than the other. He's humped over, and then he plays the flute because he had some real physical limitations, but yet he was a sexy man, and everybody loved Kokopelli.
And he was also, he was not only a prolificator, he would bring news from the different tribes.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
He was like the guy who kind of passed on.
The messenger. He was the messenger and the orator and the music player, the flute player, and it's just magical. He's wonderful, and he's like one of their, what would you call him, a superhero of this area, of this land.
Yeah, interesting. He was also determined, possibly the images comes from a fly, which has a hump on the back and a long proboscis.
Okay, I understand going down.
But that was like, okay, I'm going to stick with the cool one.
I'm going to stick with the cool one too.
Yeah, we're not going to go with bugs on this one. So anyway, that's my Kokopelli story, and I have a couple of bronze wall plaques of him here. But that was let me
show you what I have right here. It's one of my holders for my cards. I have one. I have a couple of these.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, you put your business cards in there. They're not, no, there's no business cards in there right now, but yeah, I love Kokopelli. I love the story behind it. And I love that all these different tribes that were supposedly not connected, of different types of, I'm not talking just like a sect of a tribe. I'm talking different cultures that they had a story of this humpback flute player with the club foot. So it's kind of interesting.
Most likely passed on by the humpback flute player with the club foot.
Or the humpback whale, maybe. I don't know.
You kept telling the stories all over the place. It's me, and I'm famous. Honest, trust me. Oh, okay, then you can come in.
That's right. You're welcome.
But so he was just he guided me at a certain point in my life, which got me more connected with that area. And I mean the area literally from southern Arizona to northern Arizona. I had a girlfriend back in the day whose parents owned a steakhouse on the south rim of the Grand Canyon in Tusayan. And that was my first experience in Arizona, and that was in the 90s. Okay. And it was just, it was a heck of a commute if I wanted to go on a date, but but I love the area. I really have a connection with the area. The only thing I miss is the ocean. So if there's a really good earthquake.
Right. You might have oceanfront property in Arizona. At least George Strait told us that.
Yeah. Let's hope not, because that would be a cataclysmic proportion.
Yeah, we don't want that.
You've experienced a lot in the last 6 years that have continued to open yourself up. Where do you think, or are you given a glimpse into where you're going, or where this information is supposed to? Are you? I see this sometimes in people when I do readings. They've got a sack over their shoulder, like they're throwing seeds. And you're kind of that person right now who's got the sack and throwing seeds. But do you know who you're supposed to be giving them to, or are they just going out in the ether?
Well, I feel like my purpose is, and it always has been, is to connect with the unseen dimensions, because I came to the world doing that, and I get the most joy and passion out of doing it. And so not that I don't do other things, which I do. I run a company and do business stuff and do things in the physical, because we're here to be physical human beings, of course. But I feel like my part is to help people understand that that is not scary, that it's accessible to all, and that we're never alone. And so I'm here to teach that. And I do that through my readings, my writings, and even more. There's projects I'm working on. And I get to do cool things doing it. You know, like I'm part of the Talking Board Historical Society, where we get to share about the history of Ouija on a more practical level. I also get to talk about, you know, how it's connected to spiritualism or how people used to use it. And then of course I use the board, and then I get to do my readings. And so it's like, it's a magical path. And I'm here to really tell people. And I feel like because I'm doing it, it's clear to me, my vision. And I'm willing wherever it needs to go when it changes, because my life has changed in many ways drastically. And I'm good with that, because it's like, as long as we can be more fluid in our lives, and I'm pretty fluid. I don't always like when things happen. Trust me on this, okay? Might have a bad response to it. But if you're fluid enough, you start to find that, you know, you end up somewhere else where you may not want it to go. And all of a sudden, it's just, there you go. It opens up that lotus. It just opens you up really well. And so I'm here to help other people do that. I know that for a fact. That's my training as a therapist, that I help people for years doing that. Even in my business around a board meeting and people that have worked for me, I've used my skills on that level. So I feel like I am doing what I came here to do, and I'm open to what else I need to do. I say a little mantra that I have. I'll speak to the guides, I'll speak it to the source, to all that is. It's a beautiful day in every way. How may I serve? How may I play? It's a beautiful day in every way. How may I serve? How may I play? I actually say it 3 times, and it gets me in that space of life is about ups and downs. Life is about serving. Life is about playing. It's about working. It's about finding joy. It's about obligations. It's about excitement. So it's a little bit of everything. Excuse me. And so when I put myself in the space of I'm open to that, show me the next step, as you did on your journey, James, and I know you follow your life that way a lot. I do too. And that is what's taken me to where I am and to where I'm going to go, which I'm open to what that should be.
Perfect.
There you have it.
There I have it. And you have to go do a reading. And
I got to go, you guys, because guess what? I got to do a reading.
And if someone wants to get a hold of you, Creative Visions
Publications.com.
Go to your YouTube, Karen A. Dahlman, or Creative Visions TV. Mm-hmm. You're all over social media, but if you want a reading, get a hold of Karen. Mm-hmm. And she'll squeeze you in between all the other things she's doing. Be kind of cool. Thanks very much thanks very much for being Karen. Thanks very much for showing up today.
Oh, I can only be Karen, so thank you for having me, James.
Take care. Love you, Bob.
Bye, everybody. Bye, James.
That's it, let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there. Here come the mountains.